I started wholesaling about a year into being a real estate agent, and since then I have doubled my income by doing half the amount of deals. My name's Vayna. I'm a 22-year-old real estate agent here in Seattle, and compared to what we call retail business, which is normal buyer and seller transactions, I found wholesaling to be simpler and a lot more profitable. It's actually added a lot to my business because at the end of the day, wholesale is simply another option for my sellers. So I still do retail and I love helping buyers and sellers here in Seattle, but for my end goal of owning rental properties and creating passive income, wholesaling has been a great vehicle to build that capital and get to the goal faster. So if you're curious about wholesaling, you have come to the right place. I'm going to go over everything you need to know to get started in wholesaling, from finding properties to negotiating deals and closing that first off-market deal. We're going to talk about how I find the deals, how to explain the process to sellers, contracts, finding buyers, all that good stuff. So let's get into it. So first, of course, we have to do our disclaimer. Your state may have a couple rules and restrictions about wholesaling. You don't have to be an agent to do this, but please check with your local board to find out license and disclosure requirements. Namely, can you wholesale if you are a real estate agent? Do you need the license to wholesale? And then what kind of disclosure do you need to make to the seller as the wholesaler? But quick overview on wholesaling. If you're unfamiliar, wholesaling is a process of contracting property with a seller and then selling the right to purchase that property to an end buyer. It's really super simple. In the best case scenario, a wholesale transaction is a win-win-win because the seller gets to sell their property without having to put it on the market. There are a variety of reasons sellers prefer this route that we'll get into later. And then the end buyer gets a good deal without having to put time or marketing dollars into finding it. And of course, you as a wholesaler get paid for arranging the deal. You don't need a ton of money to start doing this. You don't need to purchase any property or do any work. And if you get really good at this, there is huge profit potential. Another one I hear a lot is, are wholesalers scammers? Unfortunately, there are people out there who try to lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want out of sellers and buyers. I've met and dealt with them. It's tragic. But the way I personally operate and how successful wholesalers who do 50 to 100 deals per year operate is with maximum integrity and ethics. You can't be successful and lie to people. It just doesn't happen. So we don't lie to sellers. The off-market option is just that. It's an option. As agents, we get to lay out what the cash offer process looks like and offer it in tandem with the listing option. It's even better for you as an agent because as opposed to those who are just realtors or those who are just wholesalers, we get to lay out and explain each option to the seller. We get to be the end-all be-all. So I still list houses, I still work with buyers. Wholesale is simply an addition to my real estate business. So just imagine for a second, you're sitting at a listing presentation with your real estate agent cap on. It's an older house, older owner whose health, let's say, might not be doing too great. They need to move out as soon as possible, but trying to clean up the house to list on the market is just too much work for them. There's all kinds of stuff in the house, personal belongings, probably a good amount of repairs to do, and they understand that they'll get top dollar on the market, but that's after they declutter the house, after it's cleaned up, after a bunch of buyers have walked through the house to see it, after they've negotiated offers and finally closed. If you've done normal buy-sell deals, you know that could be a 90 to 120 day process, and grandma wants to go. And so you tell them, hey, I could 100% list this house for you and get top dollar. But what I could also do is, if it would benefit you, is I could sell your house to one of my cash investors and close it in 14 to 30 days. You might not get top dollar because it's not going on the market for everybody to see, but if it's worth it to you to have an easier option where people aren't going through your house, I can facilitate that for you and you wouldn't even pay me. I would charge the buyer. That's what wholesaling is. I'm not telling the seller, hey, I'm gonna wholesale your house, only because that's a very self-serving sounding statement. It's just, hey, because I'm a real estate advisor, I have more tools in my tool belt than other realtors do, and I am glad to offer this option if it benefits you more than getting top dollar on the market. Right? And then just leave it up to them to decide. My big philosophy in real estate sales is there is no skill in convincing people to do something you want them to do. There is skill in finding the people with problems and aligning them with the solution. And if you think that it's your job to get the seller top dollar when they need to move fast and they don't care about what they get, you are being selfish for wanting to put your name on a listing, and you're not listening to what the seller wants in this situation. But I digress. Everyone's selling situation is different, and there are a lot of factors in that decision making, and that's why it's our job to be good listeners and find the selling solution that best fits the seller. Cool? Cool. So how do we find the deals? Depending on where you're already at in your real estate career, you might already find yourself running into situations where the house that you're doing a listing presentation for isn't in picture perfect condition. So you might not even know what to do for this person. In comes the off-market option for the seller. When I was a first-year agent, I was 18, 19 years old, and I didn't know anyone buying or selling a house in my network, so I started doing cold calls. I was pulling lists from Property Radar for all the houses in a certain neighborhood I wanted to work, and I was calling them up looking for listings. I was pretty new, didn't know what I was doing. I just started calling people looking for business. Yes, cold calling was scary. Yes, I got over it. And yes, I've got videos on how I did that on my channel. That is besides the point today. You are watching this video because you want wholesale deals. Don't be scared of the phones. I'm making calls, going on listing appointments, did a good amount of business that way until one day those leads were kind of slowing down. I was in a slow season on listings. And I happened to also realize that flippers pay a lot of money for fixer houses. I think this is right around when I met my first wholesaling mentor. I learned that if I could get a fixer house under contract and sell that contract to a flipper, I could make more than the standard 2 to 3% commission that I was making listing houses and helping buyers. There's no standard fee on wholesaling. So right there, I went and I started narrowing down my calling list that I was building on Property Radar to just old houses. If you're not familiar, Property Radar is basically a public record search platform, so you can get on there, pick an area, and pull that information. That's how I get the people's phone numbers to call them. If you've heard of PropStream, it's very similar. I prefer Property Radar because I find that the information to be more accurate and the platform's easier to use. But whatever list builder you use, the cool part is that you're able to filter by the age of the house, the length of ownership, estimated equity percentage, and all of these other things to narrow your search and pull lists of only old houses. These lists don't guarantee that the house needs a bunch of work or even that the owner wants to sell. It's simply a way to get the contact information of homeowners who have owned their houses for a long period of time. This is where I started. As I did more deals, I incorporated mass mail through open letter marketing. They have a really good deal for postcards. And then door knocking and a little bit of texting and ringless voicemail. That's what I do. I've got a couple of videos that go in depth on how I find the deals, which programs I use, how I build the list, all that stuff. But I will say that my favorite of all the methods really are cold calling and door knocking. They're the only two methods where you get control over the outcome. You can control how many people you talk to in a day by calling and knocking. You cannot control how many people reply to your postcard or your text or call you back from your ringless voicemail drop. You can grab the script of what I say in the description below. We're basically just looking for people who are looking to sell, just like looking for listings, just with a different script. So like I was saying before, there is a big advantage to being an agent and wholesaler. Whatever lead generation you choose, the big goal is to get in front of motivated sellers. My standard for motivation is simple. It's that they plan to move in the next 90 days. Yours might be different, but if they're more than 90 days out, they go on my follow-up list. If they're less, I set the appointment. So like I said, I make a lot of cold calls, and my general approach is to just be like, hey, my name's Vayna. I'm actually looking to buy a house here in Seattle, and I was just curious if you've had any thoughts on when you may plan on selling. I don't even say real estate investor or agent because those words are just invitations to get hung up on. They get those calls all the time. I am looking to buy a house for myself. Later in the conversation, I will mention that I'm also a realtor and I do real estate investing, so I can offer them a few different selling options. It always just depends on their situation. So if they're in no hurry and they want top dollar, it's probably going to be a listing. If the house is super run down and they're in no condition to clean it out to list, probably going to be a wholesale. If they hate realtors, wholesale. They don't want to pay fees or commissions, wholesale. My general move is to go into the appointment with no agenda of my own, just ask them key questions to get their motivation and then offer solutions in the form of options. Let's say a seller receives my postcard, they call me up, we set the appointment. I'll walk through the house, ask them what their current plans are, how long they've been thinking about selling, what their ideal outcome is, what's important to them about selling. And then from there, I'll let them know and walk them through the comps of, hey, this is exactly what your house would sell for on the market as it is today. These are the costs of fees and listing. Here's our listing marketing plan, how we can get it done there. And then what we could offer as cash investors without the fees, without repairs, and closing on their timeline. It's two totally different options with their own pros and cons, depending on the seller's personality type, whether they're straightforward, super analytical, expressive, or just a go with the flow person. The presentation can go a number of different ways. If you're in Washington, I'm happy to assist if you have a motivated seller. I do a lot of joint venture where you bring the lead and I help you close the seller and connect them with a buyer. I've got a link in my link tree to start the process. Otherwise, if you're not in Washington and you have a super hot lead that you need help with, send me a message. I'm happy to connect you with one of my friends in your market. So that's the appointment. I think about it in terms of I'm not just an agent or just a wholesaler. I am a real estate advisor that can assist in several different methods of selling. So if you want to list it, I'm an agent and I can help you list it. If you want a cash offer, I'm an off-market specialist. See what I did there? I can help you sell without going to market. I see a lot of agents have an identity struggle with wholesaling. Like, do I tell them I'm an agent? Do I offer them the cash offer after I already talked to them about listing? Yes. And how I explain the cash offer to the seller is I set a price with them today or this week or whatever, and then I'll charge my fee to the buyers. So they get certainty of the price they're absolutely getting, and I'm able to mark it up to the investors. It's full transparency, and a lot of the time they don't even care who the end buyer is as long as they're getting what they want. So you've got a motivated seller, they're interested in your cash offer. You might be thinking at this point, how do I know how much to offer to wholesale? Our magic number in wholesaling is 80%. 80%, 80%, 80%. The formula is 80% of ARV, which is after repair value, minus rehab cost. So get on the MLS, pull comps for new or flipped houses within half to 1 mile and similar square footage. It's okay to be within a range, but of course err on the conservative side. So let's say you're doing your homework and you determine your ARVs to be 500 to 550,000. Then you know going into your appointment that you're gonna be at 80% of that, about 400 to 440, minus rehab costs. As far as determining that rehab cost, there's a couple ways to go about it. The best is to get a contractor in the house to give you a number. Otherwise, you'll want to estimate. This is super broad, but lighter cosmetic rehab, I'll give it $30 a square foot. Medium rehab, $40, and heavy, $50 a square foot. So it's really the buyer's job to figure out what those numbers are for them. All you're doing is offering the property. So just in general, the lower you can contract the property for, the better, so that you're able to sell it. And if you can't sell it, then you just cancel your inspection period with the seller and you move on. Okay, so we know how to find the sellers. They like the cash offer option. We know how much to offer, and they're ready to go. What's next? The $1 million tip right here. You're gonna need your contracts. I use a normal purchase and sale agreement for my MLS with the seller. This one also varies by state. You can use a generic one off Rocket Lawyer or have a lawyer write one up. If you're gonna use a generic copy off the internet, just be aware that it may not cover all the legal bases to protect all the parties. I am no legal expert, but same thing for the assignment agreement. You can get it off MLS, Rocket Lawyer, or have one written. The key parts of the purchase and sale with the seller are to make the contract assignable, add an inspection period to give you time to get contractors and buyers in, sell the deal, and then you'll likely need to disclose that you're a real estate agent. But I am not a legal professional, and I highly recommend that you consult one if you're gonna write your own contract. Contract varies so much. The best thing you can do is team up with somebody for your first couple deals, because they're gonna have the proper contracts to get this done. So after the signed contract, how do we sell the deal? It's time to find a buyer. Number one is your buyer list. So start compiling a list of all the investors you meet in your prospecting, at events, just out and about, whatever. Just create a simple Google form, have them fill out their contact information and the criteria for the deals they buy. Keep that list on hand. That is your go-to. Like I mentioned before, you can also prospect for these people by pulling cash buyer lists on Property Radar. It's super simple. Just get the subscription. They already have different lists ready to go, including mine if you use the link in my bio. But grab them, skip trace, contact those cash buyers to see if they're interested in your deals. Second buyer source is Facebook groups. Get on Facebook, look up real estate investing groups in your area or state, post their deals there, see if you can get some traction. And then third, and probably most effective if you're new, is network with other agents or wholesalers who might have buyers and just share the fee. My general rule with buyers is the first to offer my asking price gets it, and if activity is slow, I'll take an offer. But once a buyer likes it, then I write up the assignment agreement. We send the contracts to escrow or the attorney if you're in a lawyer state. Make sure your escrow or attorney are investor and wholesaler friendly, and then arrange a closing. And there you have it. You have completed yourself a wholesale deal. So those are all my secrets. It really is pretty simple at the end of the day. There's probably a couple things that I haven't mentioned here that you'll just have to join my email list for, link in description, to keep updated on the rest, especially as wholesaling changes with the market. But I send out content every week about wholesaling, agent stuff, content stuff, all of that. And I am personally doing anywhere from 3 to 10 of these a month here in Seattle. And like I said, it's more profitable, it's simpler, it's a great option to offer a homeowner when they're looking for a quick, easy sale. And now my top tip for wholesale, even if you're an agent, I've mentioned it a couple times, is to partner up with an experienced wholesaler for your first 1 to 3 deals. They have the knowledge and experience to explain the process to the seller, they have the contracts, and they have buyers or know where to find them. Whenever I have a good deal, I have 5 to 10 people I can call directly who would buy it because the numbers are good, which is probably my second top tip, is make sure your numbers are good. You can find mentors or JV partners through Facebook groups, coaching groups, networking events, create relationships with them, create relationships with your buyers. I shouldn't have to tell you how valuable it is to have a good set of cash buyers and other wholesalers ready to buy your deals because they trust that you source good ones. It's always a buyer's job in wholesale to make sure the numbers and terms work for them, but it helps when you're an expert and you know what you're talking about. So that is wholesaling. If this video helped you and you made it this far, please like and subscribe. I also post a lot on Instagram, TikTok. There's a lot of case studies of the deals that I do on there in the short form. And then check out our video sponsors down below. Those are all the programs I use to find and close my deals. But that's it. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know your questions, and I will see you in the next one.